The Luster is Phantasy Star Online 2's 4th and Final Scion Class. It takes some of the best and most unique features that other classes have to offer and combines them all into one extremely fluid playstyle. Unlike other classes though, it only uses one weapon type, and that's the Gunblade. To make up for this, Luster gains access to 3 different styles, and these styles will each change the way your normal attacks, weapon action, and Photon Arts behave, and also bring along with them other benefits too. To make things even more interesting, Lusters have multiple different ways to counter, and their Photon Arts act differently when using them with or without directional inputs, and can even be held to continue into additional attacks. And if that wasn't enough, there's multiple different ways to follow up just about any attack, some of which can help you get in and out of combat, and some that can even auto-cast support techs for you, even though Luster cannot normally use techs. To unlock Luster, you must first have 2 different level 75 classes, and then accept the title for doing so at the title counter. You can then go over to Coffee and pick up the client order for Luster, and then immediately turn it in. And while we're here, keep in mind that unlike other classes, Coffee will have additional client orders for Luster that will appear as you level up and will reward skill points. I'd like to now go over the skill tree first, as there's a few things in there you need to be aware of before you can play this class to its fullest. So, getting right to it, there's a bunch of skills on the top that can be unlocked for free at certain levels. There's then a bunch on the right side that are automatically learned. The only one that's not learned for free on the right side is Complete Rest, which increases your natural PP regen when standing still after your weapon has been sheathed for a full second. And this is something you should probably spec into last, if at all. Moving back up to the top center, these next 4 skills are all free. Luster Mag is just like Hero in a 12's mag skill, in which it allows you to use melee, ranged, or tech mags. Gunblade Ability Plus allows you to use melee or ranged affixes on your Gunblades. Weapon Resist Nullification ignores weapon resist from certain enemies. And Subluster Gunblade Boost increases Gunblade damage depending on the main class when using Luster as a subclass. And while we're here, let's not forget about the level 80 skill that grants 5% damage when maxed, and the level 85 skill, which will allow you to survive one otherwise lethal hit, and can be reset upon reaching high voltage, which we'll be talking about more in just a minute. Starting back at the beginning, we have Luster Gunblade Focus, which is used to enhance many of your attacks. Next, there's Luster Time, which is an active buff you can place on your sub-palette, that when activated will grant a 30% damage reduction and double your PP regen for 30 seconds. Like other Scions, you can reuse this skill before its duration ends to perform a special attack. Moving down, this section has to do with Voltage, which is a meter that will fill up as you land attacks, and grants a boost to your damage and damage reduction that's proportional to the meter value. This caps out at a 10% damage boost and a 20% damage reduction at 500 voltage, but the meter can keep going past that. However, if you stop attacking for 5 seconds, this meter will reset. With Voltage bonus, every 100 voltage you gain, you will auto-cast Shifta and Deband on yourself corresponding to the level of those techs you have learned. With High Voltage, when reaching 500 voltage, you will first be cured of statuses, and then gain a boost to crit rate and PP recovery. During this time, any active skills used will also have their cooldown reduced by half. So if you use Luster Time during High Voltage, it will only have a 2-minute cooldown. Next, with Voltage Heat Up, when attacking a boss or mini-boss, you will accumulate voltage faster. And lastly, Voltage Reset Heal will restore a percent of HP and PP when your voltage resets and scales off of how high it was before resetting. This is a really nice skill, but also one that you may not want to max as a main class due to limited skill points. So in my opinion, to be safe, just put a few points in at the beginning, and then maybe go back later and fill more out if you feel like you need it and have extra points laying around. This next branch has to do with damage modifiers and PP cost reduction. Tech Arts Perfect Attack Multi-Bonus gives a crit rate and voltage accumulation bonus when perfect attacking different PAs or techs back to back. Next, High Combo Variant PP Save grants a PP cost reduction when using PAs or techs in a specific order. The wording for the skill itself is a little weird, but after a bit of testing and fact-checking with the community, I can now confirm exactly how it works. So the easiest way I can put it is that the third PA or tech in a combo will get a PP cost reduction if it was different than the 2 PAs or techs before it, even if the 2 before it were the same one. Furthermore, any PA or tech used in a combo that's different from the 3 before it will have an additional cost reduction, which at level 10 is an additional 50%. Just like Tech Arts multi-bonus, you can weave a normal attack or weapon action between PAs and techs in a combo and still keep these bonuses going. So in conclusion, if you want to get the most out of this skill, try to use combos that involve 3 or 4 different PAs back to back. But don't be worried about using the same PA twice in a row here and there. We then have All Attack Bonus Luster, which gives unconditional damage to all powers, And then there's Luster bonus 1 and 2 that further increase your damage when using gun blades. Now, these next 4 are all quality of life skills. Eradication Restorate restores HP and PP when an enemy dies near you. You will need at least 3 points into this to unlock the skill below it, but it's up to you if you want to max it or not. Next, Amplified Support will, at all levels, increase the maximum duration of Shifta and Deband up to 2 minutes from the default 1 minute. Adding points to this will simply increase the time each tick of those buffs give you. All this means is that you would need less ticks or casts of those buffs to get up to the full 2-minute buff duration. I would absolutely take this skill no matter what, but how many points you choose to invest is entirely up to you. In general, level 6 is a nice middle ground if you can't decide, as it doesn't take too many points, but at the same time also increases your buff duration a decent amount too. Next, Deband Disorder increases the rate at which you can apply statuses when under the effects of Deband. Unless you plan on using the status build, or using this as a subclass, there's really no need to max this. Just get it to level 3 to unlock Shift to Gauge boost below it, which gives a boost to focus and photon blast accumulation when under the effects of Shifta and is really helpful. Moving on to the bottom half of the tree, we first have all of the style related skills. Take everything in this section for each style of gunblade you have. Though do keep in mind that if you want to get the most out of this class, you will need 3 different style gunblades. Continuing down, the skills in this next section correspond to core mechanics of the class, and most are free to learn, however they can only be taken when reaching specific levels. Lastly, the bottom row are just straight stat up skills that are generally not worth your skill points until you take everything else you need first. Personally, with the last of my points, I take total attack up because I have no problem with PP management on Luster, and I don't see the small amount of HP or defense worth it from the other skills. But depending on how you augment your gear, you may have different opinions. I know it seems like we just breezed by half the skill tree really fast, but we'll be going into much more detail into these skills and styles in just a minute. When it comes to using Luster as a subclass, it brings with it really high damage multipliers, amazing resource management so long as you don't mind rotating lots of different PAs and techs, and a bunch of other quality of life features including voltage. You can definitely use a Luster main class skill tree build as a subclass, but if you want to get the most out of a Luster sub, you'd ideally want to ignore main class only skills and instead spend your points wherever else you want. As we briefly mentioned in the skill tree, Luster also uses focus, and can generate it passively, as well as through landing attacks and countering. In total, its focus gauge can fill up to 3 bars or stocks, and just about every type of attack that requires you to hold or charge it will consume one of these. With the skill Extra Attack, when doing 4 normal attacks in a row, the 4th will be bigger, stronger, and restore a lot of focus. Unlike usual normal attack chains, you cannot proc this off of PAs, so it must be from 4 normal attacks in a row. If you then have the level 95 skill, Swift Shot, you can use the weapon action after this 4th normal attack to then perform another attack based on your current style. There's also other ways to activate this in each style too, but we'll be getting more into those when we go over each style individually. With the skill Luster Sidestep Slide, when double tapping the dodge button, you will perform a long protected slide that will deal minor damage and cost 10 PP. And with the skill Advanced Sidestep Slide, when sidestep sliding towards or away from a locked on enemy, you will perform a different, stronger attack. This is going to be one of your main gap closers and disengagers as it has lots of iframes and can be used on command so long as you have PP. Next up, Luster has multiple different ways that it can counter. When dodging an enemy's attack at the last second, you will hear this sound, and then be able to follow up with a counter by using the normal attack or weapon action immediately after. However, countering this way only works when dodging without being locked on or dodging side to side. And that's because, with the skill Luster Sidestep Guard, when dodging forward or back through a locked on enemy's attack, you will instead perform a perfect guard and automatically counter. For our last counter, when just tapping the weapon action, you will move a short distance and shoot while being protected at the start. If you avoid an attack with this at just the right time, you can follow up with a counter by using the normal attack. However, do keep in mind that countering this way does not restore nearly as much focus as the previously mentioned counters. With the skill Swift Slash, after any PA or slash rise or slash fall, you will see a white horizontal line appear over your character. And if you press the normal attack when this is visible, you will then follow up with different attacks depending on the directional input used, all of which will restore some PP and a bit of focus. No directional input will have you just perform a stationary ranged attack. Using a forward directional will gap close you to your target and tracks vertically too. Holding a back directional will teleport you backwards while performing a ranged attack. and using left or right directionals will teleport you sideways while doing a ranged attack. For the last mechanic I'd like to go over right now, we have Slash Rise and Slash Fall, which are two more ways to follow up attacks. With the skill Slash Rise, when pressing the jump button along with the directional input after any attack, besides Slash Rise itself, you will cut up into the air at the cost of 10 PP and have brief guard frames at the start. Then, with the skill Slash Fall, if you press jump without a directional input after any attack, you will instead perform a downwards attack that will cost 10 PP and bring you to the ground very fast if you're airborne. Just like with Slash Rise, there are guard frames present on startup. On top of all of that, if you continue to hold jump after a Slash Rise or Slash Fall, you will consume 1 bar of focus and then continue the attack while auto-casting an uncharged Xanverse if your HP is over 75%, or an uncharged Megaverse if it's under 75%. You will, however, need to have those techs learned to do this. And if you try to do this without focus, you will still chain into the second attack, but its damage will be reduced and you will not cast the techs. As we move on to Luster's Photon Arts, there's first a few things that you need to be aware of. Starting off, once you take these skills, Stationary Arts, Photon Arts will behave differently depending on whether or not you use a directional input. Just for the sake of simplicity, going forwards, you may hear me call them Stay and Move Arts instead of Stationary and Mobile Arts. Next, with the skill Enhanced Arts, at the cost of 1 stock of focus, you can hold down Photon Arts to have them continue into their final form. However, we can actually take this even further beyond, as with the skill Enhanced combo, you can perform an Enhanced Art after another Enhanced Art so long as you have focus. Doing this also lets you skip the first half of every Enhanced Art used after the first one. Now, this may sound a little bit tricky, but the easiest way I could describe how to do this would be to first use an Enhanced Photon Art by pressing and holding any PA. Then, once it goes into its second half, let go and then immediately press and hold any PA before the first Enhanced Art finishes its animation. Going forward, enhanced combos will not be brought up again in this video until we get to the Fomel Style, but they are definitely something you should practice. And with all that out of the way, we can finally get to our PAs. First up, there's Fléchette, and when just tapping it without a directional, you will perform one quick stab that has a very long range. However, when holding this without a directional, you will stab multiple times. And then for Fléchette's Mobile Arts, you will instead perform a gap-closing stab that can track vertically if you use one in the air, and will also be your main mobility tool. And when holding its move arts, you will continue to slash a few times after reaching your target. Next up is Scatter Slug, and when used without a directional input, you will fire out a shotgun-like blast, recoiling you backwards while damaging everything in a small cone in front of you. And when using its Enhanced Stay Art, you will then fire off one more shot and flip backwards. For its Move Arts variant, you will instead move a short distance while shooting a quick burst of ammunition. And when holding this for its Enhanced Move Art, you will then fire off 2 more bursts. Next, there's Brand Extension, and for its normal Stay Arts, you will summon a weapon for your other hand and perform a quick flurry of attacks. And when holding this, you will simply continue on with a few more slashes. And if that wasn't simple enough, its Mobile Arts versions work exactly the same way, but they allow you to move around a little bit while using them. For the last normal PA, there's Hollow Point, which will fire out a piercing round that will pass through everything in a line in front of you. And for its Enhanced Stay Arts, you will follow up by firing another piercing round that will instead bounce back and forth in the air in front of you. Then, when it comes to Hollow Point's Move Arts, they are also exactly the same as their Stay Arts, but just give you some mobility when using them. Now, there is technically one more PA that Luster has, and it's called the Smart PA. And this will use a somewhat random PA, depending on your distance from your target. Surprisingly enough though, it's actually not so random, and you can somewhat predict which PA it's going to use next once you get used to it. Though do keep in mind that this will only use PAs for you. You, the player, will still have to use directionals or not if you want to use Stay and Move Arts, and you are also still responsible for any follow-up attacks like Swift Slash, Slash Rise and Fall, Swift Shot, and even dodge countering. That being said, I don't think the Smart PA is good to use until you have a firm understanding of the class, as I really don't think it helps you learn Luster at all. But it can be a fun little tool to use later on once you have a feel for Luster. As mentioned earlier, Luster has access to 3 main styles, which are determined by the element on your gunblade. Fire or Dark gives you Fomel, Lightning or Wind gives you Zandi, and Light or Ice gives you Baran. In general, these styles change the behavior of your normal attacks, weapon action, and PAs. On top of that, each style will have access to its own version of Swift Shot, and a Photon Cluster that will aid you in combat for a short time. Starting with Fomel Style, it focuses on close range, single target fighting, and gains voltage faster when using enhanced or held Photon Arts. Its enhanced or held normal attack is a gap closer. However, if you have at least one stock of focus when using this, you will also summon 3 blades that will fire out one at a time when using Photon Arts, and these will restore 5 PP and inflict gelin. That being said, it's a good idea to use the augment factor Phrase Decay on your weapons, which allows you to deal 5% more damage to targets inflicted with gelin. At least in group content, between all the phantoms and lusters running around now, almost everything will be gelined. Holding the weapon action in the Fomel style will have you continuously stab while draining focus. When letting go, you will perform a protected gap closing finisher that's damage will scale off of how much focus was used. In the end, it'll be up to you to decide when it's worth it to use the weapon action or when it's worth using PAs instead to maintain some freedom. Next, to summon the Fomel Style Photon Cluster, you must use 2 PAs back to back, and then make sure to perfect attack the second one as soon as possible. When done successfully, a set of bits will appear and surround you for 10 seconds, preventing knockbacks and knockups, and when coming into contact with an enemy, they will deal minor damage, generate focus and voltage, and restore 5 PP. Lastly, as we mentioned before, each style has access to Swift Shot, which is actually just a mini version of their held weapon actions finisher. In general, they're nice for some quick extra DPS, while also restoring some focus and PP. Normally, you can activate Swift Shot in any style by using the weapon action after the 4th or extra hit in the normal attack chain. However, in the Fomel style, you can also trigger this by perfect attacking with a weapon action after performing an enhanced combo. Though do keep in mind that if you use the weapon action too soon, Swift Shot will not activate. Also, this is much more easily done when the first enhanced art you used has a longer animation. Moving on to the Zandi style, this style focuses on AoE, and passively increases the attack speed and move speed of mobile arts. It also gains voltage faster when using mobile arts too. Its enhanced normal attack is a short gap closer. However, if you have at least one stock of focus when using this, you will also create a tornado in front of you that will suck everything in for 3 seconds. This can also stun too, and if it does, you will gain additional focus. Next, Zandi's charged weapon action will call down lightning onto everything in the area. Holding this will increase its range around you and damage at the cost of more focus. For its Photon Cluster, after successfully dodging an attack with a sideways dodge or weapon action dodge, you will get a pair of wings that will last for 40 seconds. These will then fire out ranged attacks when you use PAs and will restore 5 PP each. To be more specific, the weapon action dodge can be used in any direction. However, due to the skill Sidestep Guard, dodging forwards or back counts as a guard instead. So, if you're trying to activate Zandi's cluster with an actual dodge, it must be sideways. And then, when it comes to activating Zandi's Swift Shot, you must successfully perform a sideways dodge, and then perfect attack with the weapon action. And that's it. For the last main style, we have Baran, which focuses on long range and defense. First off, Baran increases the range and voltage accumulation of stationary arts. It also then adds god frames to the beginning of just about every stationary attack and PA you perform. Then, unlike the previous 2 styles, Baran is the only one with a unique normal attack, in that it also sends out a ranged wave of light with each of its swings that can travel through and damage everything in a line. Next, its enhanced normal attack is a short gap closer, just like the other styles. But if you have at least one bar of focus, you will also create a small area that deals damage over time and can bind enemies inside of it. When holding the weapon action, you will consume 1 bar of focus at a time, and then fire out a strong ranged projectile that scales off of how much focus was used when let go. Baran Style's Photon Cluster acts like a shield and grants 25% damage reduction for 20 seconds. It can be summoned by perfect blocking, as in blocking exactly when you get hit. Now, Luster itself has no real block, but you can still block with a locked-on forward or back dodge because of Sidestep Guard. Furthermore, as we just mentioned, in the Baran style, just about every stationary type of attack you do will have god frames at its start too. And for Baran's Swift Shot, you must first perform a successful Sidestep Guard, which again is when you dodge forwards or back through a locked-on enemy's attack. Then, after that, just tap the weapon action when the perfect attack bubble fully appears. Just like the other styles, if you use the weapon action too soon, Swift Shot will not activate. Lastly, we have the Style Purge, In this, like Swift Shot, requires level 95 to unlock, and this basically allows you to drop your current style for 10 seconds by double tapping the weapon action. Doing this will first create an explosion that will completely refill your focus if it hits something. After that, its main perk is that you can hold down the weapon action to make your gunblade go full auto, at the cost of first draining your focus and then your PP. Now, Style Purge can end in 3 ways. The first is by simply waiting it out for 10 seconds. The next is by starting Luster Time, and the third is by reactivating Luster Time to perform Luster Time Finish. All that being said, since Style Purge's activation does decent damage, and gives full focus if it hits, and is up every 10 seconds, if the situation will allow for it, it's not a bad idea to weave it into normal gameplay to extend your rotations. However, the most notable way I can see this being worked into a combo is one involving Luster Time, in which you would first burn your focus. Then pop Style Purge and burn your focus again. Then pop Luster Time to get back into your main style and refresh your focus yet again. Then pop Style Purge and burn your focus again. Then just continue on with your usual rotations. But before you want to end Luster Time, use Style Purge one more time to give you some more focus to do one final burst. After that, when you reactivate Luster Time to do the finisher, you will go right back into your main style. Atomizer Fanatic is an amazing ring that will allow you to use atomizer items twice as fast, will increase their potency by 60%, and will also grant you invulnerability when using them too. So with this, Star Atomizers become a very fast and reliable AoE heal, and you can now safely and quickly resurrect other players. Leaping Dodge, at max, can be used from the sub-palette every 5 seconds, to perform a jump that will take you higher than a double jump would, and grants invulnerability during most of the animation. You can also perform a single jump after this to go even higher too. A Party Toughness ring will increase your damage reduction as your party size goes up, granting a 5% damage reduction when in a full party of 4. Now, this might not seem like much, but it all adds up when you factor in the 30% damage reduction from Luster Time and the 25% damage reduction from Baran Style's Photon Cluster. And last but not least, a Crit Strike Combined ring will grant 20% crit rate and 3% crit damage to all powers. Since Luster scales off ranged power, you could instead use a Crit Strike ranged ring. But if you invest in a combined crit ring, you could use it on lots of other classes too. And that's about it for Luster's basics. There's lots of cool ways to combine all the different features we went over to make some really interesting combos, but what I'm finding is that a lot of Luster is situational and up to personal preference. That being said, I would still like to make more Luster videos in the future to go over some of these potential combos, but for now, I hope this has eased you into Luster a little bit. And until next time, stay swifty.